1.
Yes!
Oh, do you know what it is today, girls?
Yes!
International Thunderbirds Day.
National
Harriet,
Thunderbirds.
I didn't know you cared. Oh my goodness, I'm very impressed.
Yes, it
And
took hours. It took hours.
Join my hat making brigade.
I know. I like it was always Thunderbird 2 was always my favourite spaceship. I mean, plane, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And I wanted to honour you and Thunderbirds and Thunderbirds 2 today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very, very, very good. Harriet, can we see the writing?
Yes, darling, it's the bubble writing. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, yes. Like we used to do as little girlies. And Sherry, darling, you look so Lady Penelope today.
Thank you. This is, well, actually, to be truthful, Dee, I was just about to put the rubbish out, and this is what I wear. Because Lady Penelope would. Do you know what I mean?
Of course you would.
Yeah, so this is my normal kind of. Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, darling, of course. And you always look fabulous and very Lady P, I have to say.
Well, you're so right.
Oh, yes,
I agree with you.
I want to ask you this question. Why is this International Thunderbirds Day? Is this an anniversary of the day the first show went out?
It is. It's 55 years.
Wow.
Yes, 55 years. And I hate to admit, darlings, but I'm going to be proud to admit that I remember the day that Thunderbirds was conceived. And yes, that very unfortunate terminology, but my parents used to write in the garden and in our house in Buckinghamshire, and I was in the kitchen doing a bit of drawing because I was only 2 at the time, of course. Anyway, and they came in from the garden. They went, "We have just written something really exciting," and we're so excited. They were jumping up and down, and I remember their excitement because they had written other stuff and it was all very successful, but this was the pinnacle. This was the big one, and they felt it. So I remember the excitement. Yeah. Although I didn't know why, I didn't understand, but it was, they knew that this was going to be very special.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it actually was transmitted 55 years ago today, which is amazing, isn't it? Time
30th
flies
of
by.
September, 1965. Not that I remember it, but that's what my mother told me.
It's such an important part of all of our childhoods. It really was. And that beginning bit, it's still exciting to hear that 5, 4, 3, and that the music is amazing. And Dee, the writer of the music, I mean, did your mama ask him specifically to write a certain type of music? Because the music for all those shows.
There's this really, not a lot of people know this, but my parents had different sort of ideas for the music. So they gave Barry Gray was a very accomplished composer. He'd actually been Vera Lynn's piano player in the war and also her arranger. Yeah. And he was very unassuming. I remember him really well. And they gave him a note and said, right, my mum loved Hawaii Five-0 music, which, as you probably remember or not, da 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 da. Yeah, yes. And my dad loved the Dam Busters, but with a big sort of yes. So they said to him, do a combination of the two, which of course spectacular.
It's iconic. It's iconic as an intro. As said, Debbie, we all know and get excited when we hear those numbers read out.
I think it's funny, isn't it, that it creates excitement, because I suppose as a child, because we didn't have TV like the kids do now, the TV was on, was it between 5 and 7, or was it 4 and 6? I don't know. Our television time was 2 hours a day, and so that 2 hours, any of the shows that were on there, and then, were just for us. And it was really exciting.
And they were new superheroes in a way that was totally accessible, not in a comic, but suddenly there were these beings who were saving the world, saving the planet.
But a lot of scientists later on took a lot of heat from the swimming pool. The swimming pool that went back, and one of the Thunderbirds came up through the swimming pool, and then also if you look at Thunderbirds 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they were so in front of their time.
Yes.
I mean, you know, I think they must have looked back and thought, who on earth thought of those, though? I mean, the house they lived in was very, very modern for that day.
Yeah, it was.
Who on earth came up with those ideas of all the rockets and the one coming from underground? And I mean, I just thought it's extraordinary when you look back now.
Extraordinary.
And when you think of the Harrier jump jet that we have now, that seems to have come from there. You know, that elevated lift.
And now the Harrier's redundant. I can just tell you. So it's gone as well.
Yes. But it was before its time, Dee. So how on earth did your mum and dad come up with all those extraordinary stories and everything?
My mother was very much the creative part of the couple, and she was the one that actually came up with all the characters and the storylines. And my dad was into the sort of adventure bit as well, so it was a really great team. But she created, like she said to me before she died, actually, as long ago, only about 5 years ago, she said, I think the reason we had longevity was because everyone had an emotional connection with the characters.
Yes.
Because otherwise you wouldn't care.
Yeah.
And so she made them, she aimed them at adults, actually. Yes. And with, for instance, with Lady Penelope, who, as you can see, is here with me today.
Yeah.
Can we see her, Dee? Can you bring her
closer? Can you just bring her forward?
No, because she'll, it's a bit fragile, yeah.
Can I say something? I might have been in love with Virgil. I didn't ever think I'd be honest about a puppet and my love for him. But I'm sharing it now. And it was that connection, as you said, in love with the puppets, with the characters.
Yes.
Yeah. And we all did. Amazing.
Yes, well, that's right. Well, in fact, bringing that point up, Harriet, was interesting because I remember as a kid seeing them as puppets, you know, heads and arms and everything all over the place. And yet we had letters from all over the world with people saying they were in love with Virgil or Scott.
Wasn't me. Wasn't me.
And I thought the world had gone mad because I thought, don't they realise they're not real?
They are real. They are real. Don't tell me they're not. Don't tell me they're not.
I want to.
Well, I know that now.
Dee, I want to ask you about Parker, because Parker is iconic, and everybody does Parker's voice. Where did he come from? Was it somebody your mum and dad knew?
Yes, well, it was somebody they met because they used to go to this little pub in Cookham for lunch when they had a sort of studio in Slough. And there was a guy an old man, waiter, who'd worked for the palace, for the royal family. And he used to come along and he was really bent over. And I remember him really well. And he'd come up and say, "What would you like to eat, madam?" And and would you like to see this? This is what we've got on the menu today, sir.
Oh.
So, and then
a bit of Mrs. Overall going on there, I think.
Right. So my mum said, so my mother went, "Oh God, he's going to be perfect for the show." So she created this character based on him. David Graham, who's still alive actually, did the voice, and they got him to go to the restaurant to study the character.
How brilliant.
Of this guy. And yes, and then they decided to add another, or she decided to add another dimension, that he'd done time, and that he was a bit of pick locks and stuff like that. So, so that was Parker. With Lady Penelope, for instance, one of my mother's favourite books was The Scarlet Pimpernel, and so she wanted a female protagonist. So she because she was way ahead of her time, and she always had a sort of she always really championed females, and sort of ethnic minorities, as we know, Harriet. And so Lady Penelope was born, and she wanted her to be a secret agent. And she thought a posh one, because it would actually translate well to the States. So all of those elements came into, Lady Penelope Creighton Ward. Yeah. So
that's so amazing. Can I bring in extraordinary Dr. Tracy Mountford, but she's got something very important to tell us today.
Oh, okay.
Welcome, Tracy.
Hey.
Now, Tracy, Tracy, I believe you're here because you are, as an aesthetic skin clinician, I think it's very important that you're going to actually honour us today with a Thunderbirds puppet makeover. Can you explain, please, how Lady Penelope looked the way she looked, so that we can now become forever.
Yes.
Thank you. Exactly.
Yeah, she did look like that forever, didn't she, throughout the whole series? Well, she was that classic 1960s look, don't you think, Dee? That humongous eyes, I mean, just enormous eyes. And I was looking at images of her, and of course the big lashes. She had the lashes, and of course the lashes have got a resurgence now as well. But that classic focus on huge eyes, and that very gorgeous large mouth. So her eyes and mouth were slightly disproportionate to the rest of her face, weren't they? But it's visually really pleasing. So the way we'd have to give you the makeover is, I mean, this is how we do it. I mean, it's lashes ahoy, because I think everybody would have to wear the lashes. I think some, myself included, that tiny little nose, I'm not quite sure how we do that, but that really tiny little button nose and those gorgeous cheeks. I mean, the cheeks are easy, bit of filler, that's easy. Really, really easy. And of course, the mouth's easy peasy lemon squeezy. We spend the whole time talking about how people shouldn't overdo their mouths. But for Lady Penelope, it so worked, didn't it?
Oh.
It just literally she was totally on point, because it was lovely.
And still is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she was fantastic.
Can I say, Tracy, that the mouth, actually, because the whole face structure was based on my mum, apart from the eyes, which were apparently my eyes.
Well, they are. I was going to say that your eyes are huge. And so she had these enormous eyes, which, I can see it in you. It's there, Dee. Go on.
Yeah. Sorry, Tracy, I don't know, I'm interrupting, but I just wanted to say that I always wanted to have my mother's wide mouth, and I got, you know, and so can you ever?
Well, now you can. Now you can,
do
darling.
that.
You can easily the wide mouth frog. Well, of course, people you don't want too wide a mouth, because the problem with that is, particularly, there's a lot of talk about people who have too tight facelifts, who end up with that sort of wide mouth, mouth look, the wide mouth frog. And of course, as we get older, as I've witted on for many, many, many episodes before, what tends to happen is the lips get narrower, and if your mouth gets wider, you look really weird. But some people, you can widen the mouth very cleverly. If someone's got that really itsy ditsy mouth, you can actually widen the mouth quite cleverly with fillers, not to overblow, but you can actually treat the corners a little, so that you just bring out the width a little bit. And again, you know, I go on and on about harmony and balance. The nose, the nostrils are meant to just literally finish here, and the mouth is meant to extend sort of about a third out either side for really nice balance.
Well, Julia Roberts, Tracy. Julia Roberts.
If somebody, do you know what I've done when I've lectured at conferences and talked about, you know, who we perhaps would perceive as the most beautiful laugh and the most beautiful smile. Julia Roberts is the one that I would wheel out every time, but I'd wheel out her laugh as well. That absolutely gutsy laugh. You know,
let me just Tracy, I'll just tell you a little story. When I went to LA to do this filming for ITV, and we were visiting all the plastic surgery places, which is every corner shop in LA. And one of them we went to, they do this face off. So what they do is they cut round, they take your whole face off, the whole skin, and they put it on the sideboard, and then you have another one back on. And I said, can I have that? But could I have not mine back, which you could iron? Could I have Julia Roberts back? Because obviously they've got drawers of all these people, and I said, please give me Julia Roberts. Anyway, I was virtually thrown out of the shop, as you can imagine.
That's so brilliant. What a great story.
She's fabulous.
Something that's very interesting, though, Tracy, if you look back, for all of you, I don't know if you've done this, but I have, look back on pictures of Julia Roberts when she first started. She hasn't got a big mouth. She's got a very small mouth. Yeah, it's filler. Her mouth is not natural.
Yeah, I mean, she's got the most, I think, you know, like anything, it's difficult to see, but over time you can see people evolving and changing. There's natural change, and then there's tweaked change. And again, going back to that stuff we talked about forever and ever, it's those people, whether Julia has or not, it's those people that do it well, where people, it's imperceptible.
You wouldn't
haven't
notice.
even got a clue of what's gone on until you keep referencing back. So whether she has or hasn't, I mean, I feel a bit sorry actually for you guys in this industry, because frankly, nobody even ever seen a photo of me when I was young. But you know, everybody can look back at you guys and look at, you know, Celebrity World.
But can I say, Tracy, Lady Penelope never needed that. She was beautiful from the day she was born, and she's beautiful now, and she hasn't changed one iota
in 50 something
and she's
years.
Never had work done, you know. She never had work done.
It's all genetics. It's all genetics. And wouldn't we want that pill? Wouldn't we want that pill when we say? Absolutely the same.
Lady Penelope pill.
One day.
What it would look like to look. Well, you can see that with certain actresses who look amazing on the outside, but they can barely walk because they're so old. And I don't know if that would be very nice to be this sort of like dolly that looks amazing on the outside, and when she stands up, falls over.
It's okay, darling, because she's got strings to make her walk.
She's got strings.
A puppet. She doesn't need it. She's got ropes and pulleys, darling. She's sorted, and that is what we need. Then we can have ropes and pulleys, and we will be fine.
We will be fine.
Ropes and pulleys. That is the answer.
Penelope. Yes.
Thank you, Tracy, so much. That has given us our puppet makeover. We know exactly what to do now.
It's really simple.
It's
Let's put right in. We'll just start wheeling them all out. Absolutely, no problem.
And strings. So we come to your place, we get strings so we can stand up. We're fine. We've got big mouths, and we're a bit like.
Do we get to choose? Do we get to choose our puppet handler? Because I'd like to suggest some people. I think if that's possible.
Yes, absolutely. Choose whoever you want.
Well, they have to be 30, obviously, and we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.
Bye, Tracy.
Bye, darling.
We'll see you next week.
Happy Thunderbirds Day. Bye.
Thank
See
you.
you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh,
You're very
fabulous.
happy, actually, Harry.
There you are. You see, now we've created something for Tracy now. She can call it the Lady Penelope facelift. You see?
Yes.
There you go. Put it online.
And probably non-surgical facelift.
Yes.
And I also like the fact that we have discovered that it doesn't matter, that we can have all these things done, Sherry. Everything can be done. We can look amazing, and then all we have to do is put strings on us. And then we're fine.
Yes.
I love the way they walk. I love the way they walk.
So Dia, I need to ask you this. You talk when we talk about Thunderbirds, talk about animatronic. Can you explain to us what that actually means?
Animatronic? Do you mean super marionation?
Yes.
Yes.
You've done your research, Debbie. Good.
It is. Yeah. The thing is, when they started out, just to make it very clear, they hated puppets. Well, my dad did anyway. And it was my mother's idea, because she'd worked with kids, and when she was at LSE, she did a lot of work experience with children. And so her thing was about, you know, helping people and international rescue and all that. And so she thought, after them doing a series with somebody called Roberta Lee, who was a puppeteer, that they could actually stretch kids' imagination and do a series with puppets. And my father went, no, I can't do that, because they were both, you know, filmmakers. So she said, no, it's going to happen, because we can give them a heartbeat and a pulse and bring them to life and make them really, you know, have emotions. And so this is how she started creating all the characters for their very first series, like Supercar, 5XL5, etc., and going back to even earlier to Four Feather Falls. So, and suddenly it all took off very quickly. And, you know, I didn't really get it. I was actually, I really was too young to remember that beginning. But I remember the excitement around it and how it grew and grew, and how suddenly they were sort of doing stuff. You know, they built a studio in the Slough trading estate. Now, my mother my mother had this thing about going to Hollywood. She loved Hollywood movies. She was obsessed, and she wanted to be a Hollywood actress. And she ended up auditioning for RADA, but going to the London School of Economics because her parents wanted her to have an education. So she always said to me, I kind of made it. We got a studio, but it was on the Slough trading estate. So it wasn't quite as good as Hollywood.
But she really was at the forefront, Dee. She was at the forefront of so many things. And as I was saying, I lived a few doors down from Cy Grant, who was the first man of colour, and he was the puppet. And in Thunderbirds, it was a revolutionary moment. I remember we grew up together, all the kids, Dana, Dominic and Sammy, his children, and the thrill of going when he was first launched into the series, going around there and watching him on telly. And Thunderbirds was already in our psyche, but that was a most important and life-changing moment visually on every sense.
That's great that you mentioned that, Harry, because she insisted on that, and it was very important to her. And but she had a lot of opposition, I think, even from my dad, who
I think culturally at the time it was very different. But to have your mother at the forefront of fighting for, again, you know, diversity in the arts was that is where it starts from very often. Was so wonderful.
And that's right. And she didn't really, she was quite fierce in that way, and she would stand up for anyone. And I think actually, if she hadn't, well, she always said this to me, that if she hadn't gone into, you know, showbiz or the film industry, she would have worked with young offenders, because she said because she did that, she started to do that, and she started turning their lives around. And which is why we had letters, long after Thunderbirds or any of them, from people to say, I had a terrible childhood, but because of the things that you raised in certain, you know, programs, it completely transformed my life. So she said, I did make a difference.
Yes.
I did have an effect on kids. I did do what I wanted to do. And that was the most important thing to her.
Absolutely.
And, so I know that I'm sort of talking about her more than my dad, but because there's, you know, her name has been left out of so many things.
And she's a creative, isn't she? She was the creative.
Yeah. And she didn't care about the business. She didn't care about I suppose people would say, well, your dad was sorting that bit out, but she never did really. She was never interested in money.
All of us creative people, we don't care about the money. We just want to get it on. And
that's right.
You know, we're just passionate about working, as opposed to the money is something else. And I think your mum is part of every single person's childhood who grew up in the 60s. Everybody. That's what connects us all. We sit down and we talk about it. And then, of course, Space 1999 was another revolution, wasn't it? I know this is Thunderbirds Day, but I remember when that happened and how incredible that was.
And she did a lot of well, she got the idea and took it to Lou Grade, and because she'd written a lot of books before, even Supercar, you know, and which were published, and those ideas were put to Lou as well. So a lot of that is not sort of public knowledge, and she kept very quiet about it.
But I think, Dee, it needs to be public knowledge, because women are always looked at.
Absolutely.
And actually, the driving force of this whole empire of Thunderbirds, of Space 1999, all of that is your mum, and is an amazing woman. And there needs to be a book, a whole load of things, if there isn't already, about her, not about anyone else, about her creative art.
Well, this is it, because like yesterday I did, you know, some radio interviews for, and we spoke about Wonderbirds and Thunderbird and all, and actually it all came up. And as people, most of the presenters introduced me, they said, you know, daughter of Jerry and Sylvia Anderson for all the Jerry Anderson shows. And I thought, how can they say created by Jerry and Sylvia Anderson and call it the Jerry Anderson shows?
But also, don't you remember when we were growing up? I remember it used to say Sylvia and Jerry Anderson. She came first, because I remember thinking it's a woman. I remember being excited by it, even as a child.
Yeah.
And also, we're called Wonderbirds because of your mother's Thunderbirds. That's why we have our name. We wouldn't be Wonderbirds without her.
That's right.
But Dee, she lives on, and she lives on through you, and she lives on through this show. And so therefore we must put it out there. And I know you're doing a lot around Thunderbirds and your mum, but she will live on, and even more so now.
Yes.
Even more so now.
So, yeah, absolutely. So
Sylvia Anderson, we are looking after you. The Wonderbirds are looking after Sylvia. We will make sure that everyone knows who you are.
Yes. Yeah. What a wonderful salute to the International Thunderbirds Day.
Yeah.
Salute to Sylvia.
Thank you.
A salute to Sylvia. Absolutely.
Mum.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Mum,
Thank
we're
you.
all there for you.
No,
thank you.
I'm so thrilled and honoured to have met her as well. So,
thank you, darling.
Lovely, lovely, amazing lady who was strong and sassy. And, you know, I think she, you know, like a lot of women in that time in the industry, she had to fight so hard for everything. And she's still fighting.
Yeah.
She's still fighting for recognition, isn't it?
Oh,
yeah.
There you go.
I must tell you the other thing actually, is with Thunderbirds 2, I met this guy recently, extraordinarily, who actually had been brought up in Mumbai. And when he was 7, he came to this country with a life-threatening illness, because it was the only place in London where this particular sort of cure or sort of treatment was. And he'd been given days to live. And he said he remembers waking up and there was a television. He'd never seen a television before. And on television was Thunderbird 2. And he said he thinks that Thunderbird 2 is why he's alive today. Because he said that Thunderbirds gave him such joy and such a purpose. And now he's the biggest collector of Thunderbird 2 in the world.
Wow.
And he's got a life then. I'll tell him about the hat. She might actually want that. Thank you.
It's been the most brilliant show, and I hope all the Thunderbird fans like all the little bits of extra stuff that we've got within this show today, because we've got lots of special things that haven't been seen before, haven't we, Dee?
Absolutely. I mean, yes. I mean, on one more note, actually, I wanted to tell you a very un-PC or very sort of thing that would never happen today.
Brace.
And that is the alligator story.
Oh yes, I know this story.
Well, my parents had actually got some live baby alligators for a special scene with Lady Penelope, where she was nearly, I think, I'm not quite sure what went on, but anyway, somebody there said, we'll give them little electric shocks, right? But tiny ones, so just to make them move a little bit. So, because they were so docile, they weren't even moving. They were like, oh, this is lovely and warm with all the lights. So somebody called the RSPCA, quite rightly, who turned up, but he was so mesmerized with what was going on that he completely forgot why he was there and said, oh, don't worry about it, it's absolutely fine, and let it go. And it's still in one of the episodes. But he actually did say that. Thank you so much for all of your love and support, and
absolutely.
Mum, we love that, and thank you. I really appreciate all of you. I'm so grateful to you, all of you. And
you know what?
Thank you.
The whole world are behind you, because it's across the globe. International Thunderbirds Day. It will be everywhere. Everybody everywhere will be celebrating it, because it was the most loved show ever.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Gary. Thank you, darling.
We're very proud to be involved with you, as I
part
said.
Of it.
We'll see you on Friday,
thank you,
darling.
Sylvia, for the Wonderbirds, because you're still with us.
Yeah.
Thank you, darling.
See you Friday, guys.
See you Friday.
See you Friday. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.